Hi everyone, welcome back to Box of Delights. Today we're playing Three Sanchos, a game of conflict in the time of El Cid for 1 to 3 players, designed by Dave Mortimer, published by Surprise Stare Games. This is a preview, but as always, I'd never take payment for videos, but full disclosure, Dave Mortimer is a friend of mine, and that's why I'm showing this to you today. I'm going to demonstrate the solo game. This is all prototype, okay? It's all been printed at home. Artwork's not final. It's representative of what the game is going to look like, but we've got just sleeved paper, self-printed cards, self-printed board, some proxy components. Everything is prototype. What I want to do for you today is demonstrate gameplay. The board is double-sided, so this is for the 2 or 3 player game, this side for the solo game, and that's what we're going to look at today. We take on the role of one of the 3 Sanchos, the Sancho of Castilla, of Navarra, or Aragon. We're in the year 1065, running through 1067. The War of the 3 Sanchos is a fight for control of this region of northern Spain, northeast Spain. The 3 Sanchos are grandsons of Sancho the Great, not brothers, but first cousins. This is the 3rd game Dave Mortimer has designed for this Pocket Campaign series for Surprise Stare. First was Cousins War, then Ming Voyages with Alan Paul, who obviously designed March of Progress alongside that. So 3 Sanchos designed by Dave, 3rd in this series. I guess you could say these are 3 more cousins fighting. Alan Paul has developed this one with Dave, and like I say, I want to demo the solo game for you. Whether you're playing 1, 2 or 3, there's always 3 Sanchos in the game, of course, and when you're playing solo, you can take on one of these, Castilla, Navarra, Aragon, and the other 2 are played out by auto Sanchos. In the solo game, pick your side, and then the other 2 are going to team up against you. There is a little asymmetry in it because not only do they have 3 different home regions, but there's also a shift in the balance of the types of actions that each Sancho is more or less likely to take. Let's say I'm going to play Aragon. So let's have a look. I say this is area control. The aim is to get to 10 points. Points are scored by controlling castles and towers in each region. So this castle here in this neutral territory, for example, awards 2 victory points. This tower 1. In the multiplayer game, home castles are worth a little more, 3 points for a home castle. Each Sancho has a king, so we're Aragon, we're green, and they start the game in their home region. Now when a unit is placed in a tower or castle, they're a garrison. When they're played outside of a tower or castle in the region, they're a field army. So I'm going to place all the starting units as field armies. So Aragon starts there. These are the 3 home regions. They start, the kings or the Sanchos start in their respective home regions in the field. Accompanying them are 3 troops. We've got coloured discs representing the troops. They start with 3 field armies in each home region supporting their king. These aren't scoring any points right now. They're not in a tower or castle. They're in the field. So for the start of the game, there's 1 troop garrisoned in their home castles. So 1 in Navarra, Aragon, Castilla. Okay, so that means they're awarding their Sancho 2 points each. So that's 2 points for us. Now because the auto Sanchos are teaming up, their combined score is 4. So we don't need both tokens, just 1. We'll use the red one. There's a little marker here to show you. They start on 4 points. These numbers here on each region, they just number each region uniquely, is used as a tiebreaker. Highest region, lowest region. There's a decision arrow here, highest, lowest, and this tiebreak marker moves up and down to determine whether it picks highest region or lowest region when there's a choice. Start at highest. I'll show you how that works as we get into it, but that's purely for the solo game. And we've got a tough job. There's 2 Sanchos teaming up their scores. It's a race to 10 points. Although these 2 Sanchos are teaming up, it doesn't mean they won't fight each other. These cousins were all about fighting with each other. So For the most part, the regular rules of the game will follow in the solo game. The only real difference is that their scores are combined. Okay? So Castilla and Navarra will fight for control of these territories, and that's a lovely layer to the solo game. As we're jostling for position, we can play these two opponents off against each other at times. Use that to our advantage. Throughout the game, we're going to be recruiting new troops. We're going to be deploying troops to the map. We're going to be moving troops about the map. We're going to be fortifying towers and castles, scoring the points. If two field armies exist in the same region, they can fight each other using attacks, knocking units off the board. I'm going to show you how that works. And also, if one Sancho is garrisoned in a castle or fortress, you can besiege that fortress and castle and push them out and take control of it yourself. Those are the basic actions. So we're going to be moving units about, recruiting, deploying, attacking, fortifying, and besieging. Okay? And we're going to be doing that with these cards. Right, I'll show you how those work as we get into the game, but action cards will grant you actions to deploy, move, recruit, and so on. Okay? Now for the start of the game, each Sancho starts with 2 recruits. So I'm going to place these adjacent to their respective home regions. And also the solo rules present a series of solo scenarios, whether you're playing as Aragon, Castilla or Navarra. There's also a solo campaign challenge where you can play the scenarios in order, different difficulty levels. We're going to start on easy. And there's also a variant where you can add El Cid to the game. El Cid's an additional card that Navarra and Castilla can use. El Cid allows you to manipulate the battle dice. We're going to show you how battles work, but I don't have El Cid in my printout actually, so I'm not going to show you that today, but something to look forward to when you get the game yourself. Right, so we're playing the basic easy game, no extra variants, but each of these scenarios, in this case we're playing Aragon on easy, will give some extra field troops to the auto Sanchos. To Navarra in region 8 and to Castilla in region 1. A long way from home, they're all over here. Next we shuffle up the action deck. There's an action deck of 27 cards. We start with a hand of 3 cards. The auto Sanchos don't get any. If you're playing 2-player, then there'll be 1 non-player Sancho. So that's our starting hand. Top left, these are command points. So on our turn, we'll be playing a card for command points, and we can use those command points for the various actions that you can take. Remember, recruit, deploy, move, attack, fortify, besiege. Okay. When you play a card for its command points, you'll spend those command points how you wish, and then the other Sanchos, so whether you're playing solo or multiplayer, the other Sanchos, let's say I play this card. So I'm green, I'm Aragon. The other Sanchos, on your turn, you'll spend your 3 CPs, will then, mandatory, they have to take this action. Right, so Castilla will have to deploy 3 troops to their home region. Right, if they can't, the rest go on recruiting. Navarra will have to move 3 from their strongest army to an empty region, if not possible to its weakest army. Right, so when you play a card, the other 2 Sanchos will have to do those things. Those are not optional. Right, Navarra might say, well, I don't want to move. I want my troops where they are. Tough. Okay, you have to do it. And this is where the crux of the game is. It's about choosing the right cards at the right time. These Sanchos, they don't always have, total benevolence power. The troops aren't always obedient to their needs. So this is reflecting the fact that local commanders may be making their own decisions. Right? So things are going to happen on other players' turns to your troops, to your king, that are only somewhat under your control. So it says, so for Castilla, for example, deploy 3 to a home region. They have to do that. Move 3 from your strongest army to an empty region. Well, you can potentially choose which empty region for Navarra. Okay, so there's a little bit of choice there. In the bottom action, this is one, there's always 2 here. There's one that's performed by human Sancho, and then a section performed by the auto Sancho. Right, so we ignore this one, we're going to look at the bottom one. All right. So when you play a card, it's a double-edged sword. You're using it for yourself, and you're potentially benefiting or hurting your opponent. Typically, you're benefiting your opponent. So they may not want to do these things. So Navarra here is probably thinking, well, I didn't want to move armies out of my strongest into an empty, but they get a free move, effectively. Whereas Castilla doing getting deploy 3, recruit remaining, I mean, that's always positive. Okay, so look at what you do. So this 1 CP card does if I played this, I get to spend 1 CP however I wish, so we ignore the green part. But then Navarra gets to fortify 1, if not possible, besiege most favourable. Now it may well be that Navarra can't fortify. They don't have any troops available that can fortify, and they don't have any troops that are besieged. If I played this card and Navarra couldn't take this action, it was impossible, then well done me, right? I've managed to play a card that meant Navarra couldn't benefit. So lots of layers to this game of which cards to play when, and you will tend to, I mean, it's a 27 card deck, but you will kind of get an idea about the shape of this deck. And when I said there was a little asymmetry in the 3 Sanchos and the way they play, that's because of the distribution of these actions, all right, that you get to take when it's not your turn. Okay, right, that's my hand. We're ready to get going, and in a solo game I always start as first player, and the player whose turn it is, I'm going to use this spare counter to record whose turn it is. So I start the game. They're known as the commander. So the commander is the one who's going to be using the command points at the top left. Now as it goes on your turn, you can do one of 2 things. You can either play a card for its command points, or you can place 1 card in what's called reserve. You just place it face up in your player area. You can only do this if you don't have a reserved card, right? So I could place a card in reserve. That card can then be used to support a battle when a battle takes place, right? When someone attacks me or I attack someone. They help you manipulate the dice, and we'll see that when it happens. But I'm not going to do that right now. Instead, I'm going to use a card for its 3 command points. I'm going to use this one. So I'm commander. We have a game summary here. So these are my options. Recruit. Okay. So for each CP spent, now I don't have to spend them all on the same thing. I've got 3 command points. I can spend them however I wish. But for 1 command point, I can take a troop from the supply and put it in my reserve. I can deploy for 1 command point. I can take a troop from my reserve and place it in my home castle, which is this region here, right? One with the flag. This is my home castle, or with my king. So my king might have moved around. If my king's moved around, I can deploy to the region where my king is. So that's the purpose of a king. The king helps you deploy outside of your home region. I can move. For each movement point, I can move one of my troops or my king to an adjacent region. So an adjacent region is 1 over a border. Okay, so I move a king or a troop. Okay, now they always move into the field. So 1 movement, move into the field of an adjacent region. That could be, there's a border here, there could be a region occupied by another army. That's okay, another Sancho. Next option is to fortify. All right, so we've done recruit, deploy, move. We've got fortify, attack, and besiege, right? So fortify just says for each CP, we place 1 of our counters from the field into the tower or the castle. So if I fortified this, I now control this castle, and that would award me with a victory point, 1 more VP. I couldn't do that if it was already occupied. Instead, I can besiege it. Let's say I moved a couple of units down here. Not that one, that one's garrisoned. You can move straight out of a garrison, but obviously that loses you the points. Let's say I've got 2 units here. For every CP, for every 1 CP, I can put 2 of my units, so that's king or troops, into a siege, besieging this enemy. When you're besieging, at the end of the turn, you remove 1 of yours and 1 of theirs. So in this case, I would remove 1 of mine, 1 of theirs, and that would leave 1 troop behind. I would now be controlling that tower. Right? That's a siege. Now oftentimes there might be a whole number of units here, so it will take several turns for them to deplete down to 0. Now to besiege, you must have more units. You can't siege their tower or their castle with fewer units. Right? You want to be left in control at the end of the siege. We'll look at it in more detail when it happens, but they've got a field army here that can come to the rescue of this besieged unit. Basically, they intercept the siege and an attack happens instead. So that's our final option, an attack. When an attack happens, we'll be rolling dice. You get the big die if the king's involved, a little die if it's a troop involved, and you'll get 1 die per troop. So if we attacked with a king and 2 troops here, we'd have to have moved them in here, obviously. That would be the big king die, 2 troop dice for green for Aragon, 1 red die for Castilla. The garrisoned units are not involved here. They can, if they want, pull them out, add a die, but obviously they're losing a point. And then additionally, for the attacker, the number of CPs that you spend, and you must spend at least 1, adds a die. So if I did an attack for 2 CP, let's say, I get to add an extra 2 dice. All right, and we'll look how battle resolution happens when we get there. But that's your actions. That's all of your actions. All right? Okay. So I'm commander, remember it's my turn, so I use command points. All right, I ignore this for me. I got 3 CPs to spend. And with my 3 CPs, what I'd like to actually do is move the king here and deploy 2. Right, that's 3 CPs. Right, that's my turn. Right, move and deploy twice. All right, now then, what happens next? So we've taken our turn. Now we look at the action card and we start from the top and go down. All right, we've got a couple of tokens that you can use to keep track of this. But first action is for Navarra, yellow. Fortify 3, if not possible, besiege most favourable. Now they can fortify. They've got a region here and a region here with field armies and a tower or castle that they can walk into. So which one do they choose? Do they choose to fortify here or do they choose to fortify here? There's a player aid. Obviously this is all prototype, right? So this is printed out on a crappy A4. But fortify, they're going to fortify the highest empty victory point. So they're going to give priority to this one. So that's one of their fortify and it gives them 2 points. So they've gone up to 6 points. Right, there's no empty fortification that they can now fortify, but they've got 2 CP left. It was fortify 3. So next choice is least garrisoned. Well, these both have 1 garrison, so they're equally garrisoned. Next priority has the largest field army, but they've got a field army of 1 here, a field army of 3 here. So the next fortify is going to be into here. That's 2 of the 3 fortify. They've got a third one left. Well, they're going to do exactly the same again. No, an auto Sancho will only use their king to fortify if there aren't any field armies. So there's basic rules. Here they all are. It's not easy to kind of internalize them all when you're starting out. Maybe you will after more plays, but I mean, I've only played a few times, but you know, use the reference card. It's not that much to reference, really. I think you will get used to doing this automatically. Right, that's it. So that's Navarra completed their turn. We ignore Aragon on the card because that was us. We step down to Castilla. As I say, it's an auto Sancho, so we ignore this bit. If we were playing Castilla, then we'd be doing this if we were non-commander, but bit with the crown, that's the bit we're doing for the auto Sancho. So move 3 and attack 3, not in Aragon, and fortify 3. So they've got quite a lot of stuff they can do now. So this is where the auto Sanchos get another little bonus. So they could potentially end up spending 9 CPs on a 3 CP card, but that's the extra compensation they get for being dumb, I guess. So move 3. So the rules tell us they always want to move from the strongest army. The king always moves second, so they're going to take 3 out of here, out of their home region. And They're looking for the weakest opponent. Now that one's empty, that one's empty, that one's empty. So the weakest opponent is actually Navarra over here. And they can move this way. So they're going to move 3 into region 8, like so. Okay. Then attack 3, not in Aragon, so they wouldn't attack up here. But they can attack here. Okay, so they're actually going to have a little bit of civil war going on here between these two families. So how does attack work? So they're attacking 3. So what that means is we look at their units. So they've got 2 troops, so 2 little dice. They've got their king, 1 big die. The defender here is Navarra. They've got 1 field army. They get 1 little die. They'll never pull out their last troop from a garrison because they'll lose the fortification. So they're not going to pull this one in and get an extra die. But it was an attack 3. They've spent 3 command points, which means Castilla get an extra 3 little dice. Okay. All right. Let's roll these. So once everyone's decided what to do, we roll the dice. Now remember I talked about reserve cards. If there were cards in reserve, they could come into play, but there aren't any, so we'll not worry about that just now. But let's roll the dice. Okay. Now, this is going to be a bit of a landslide for Castilla, but the next step is to use this score chart, which doubles as a battle chart, to help us resolve this. And what we do is we place every die rolled in its respective column. So we've got 3 5s, they go here. 2 1s. We'll start with the attacker's dice. Now there could be more than 2 Sanchos involved. If I was here, I'd be rolling dice as well. Right? It could be all 3 Sanchos in one region, but there aren't. 3 is here. Now this is the good part. Let's just for the sake of argument, let's say I rolled a 3 on that die there. Starting with the highest numbered dice and working backwards. Check how many dice there are in the column. If there is more than 1 dice in the column, you remove them all and they go back to the dice pool. All right, you roll bad, unlucky. So multiple dice. So the more dice you have actually can make things worse. But there we go. 3 5s. They cancel each other out. They go back to the supply. They do nothing. Likewise, 2 3s. Multiple dice. They do nothing. 2 1s. They do nothing. That would be the end of the battle. We've been unlucky. All the dice have cancelled each other out. Okay. Now as it goes, we did roll a 7 here. So this was up here. However, remember, start from the highest and work towards 0. If there's only a single die in a column, now we have some action. So again, this is a neat little system that Dave's worked out. You're rolling dice, but it's not just a simple, high beats low or anything like that. This multiple dice thing means you're never quite sure how things are going to play out. Now, if we had cards in reserve, we can be manipulating these dice now. We can be adding pips, moving them about for the auto Sanchos. For the human player, when you play a reserve card, let's say I have this in reserve, it's a 1 CP card. That's not a very good reserve card. This is a 3. What that means is I can remove up to 3 dice from one column and re-roll them. All right, so you can use your reserved cards to help you mitigate these unfortunate rolls. All right, anyway, where were we? Okay, so we're working from right to left, high to low. A single die, right, now we have action. The owning player removes that die, picks an opponent's die, still on the battle chart. Now imagine there was a 3 here, for example. We know this is a multiple die column, so this would go, right? But if we choose this die here, right, now this is a column with 1 dice, right? This column gets action now, right? So which dice you pick is not necessarily pick the highest, pick the lowest, whatever. There's strategy around. I mean, at the moment we've only got 1 die, so it's not a great example. But if there are multiple dice here, Castilla now has to think, which Navarra die do I want to take away? Yeah. As it goes, they've only got 1 choice. So they're going to pick this die. Both dice go back to the dice pool, right? So you discard your die, pick another opponent's die. We picked yellow. When you get to do that, you also take an opposing counter of the same colour, so yellow, Navara, and remove it from the region, okay, in the field. So we take that one. We can't take this one. He's garrisoned. He's safe up there. Right. So we've removed a red die and the yellow die. We remove a yellow counter. All right. Then we'd go to the next column. Obviously, that's a multi-die column. This is a multi-die column. That's it. Everything's done. That was our battle. Now, of course, there was only one counter here anyway. So if there were yellow dice left, no counters left to take, there's nothing to do. The dice would just be removed. All right. That's how battling works. It's super. It's a neat little system. It means that after you've rolled the dice, there's still strategy involved in how you resolve those dice, when and which reserve cards to play. Okay, nice little system. All right, and that's it. We've resolved the attack. So that was move 3, attack 3, and now fortify 3, unoccupied forts only. So is there anywhere that Castilla can fortify? Yes, there is. There's over here in region 1. Right, so they can fortify here. They're going to fortify 3. That gives them another point. Oh my goodness. Right, so this is why in the solo you've got to be cautious, because they can grab those 10 points pretty quickly. All right. They're only 3 points away. So we've got to start fighting back if we can. Right, but that's it. That's the card resolved. That gets sent to the discard pile. Let's place it over here. So now we've reached the end of the turn. Commander has played their card. They draw another card. Let's see what we get. It's a 2 CP action. And end their turn. Now we would be looking for sieges now. Are there any sieges going on? There aren't as it goes. And we start a new round. Now as soon as anyone hits 10, game will end, right? But it could also happen that no one reaches 10, in which case if we deplete this deck, then in the solo game, if you can't draw a card, then whoever has the highest score will win. In a multiplayer game, you actually play out your hands, and then highest scores win, unless someone can manage to hit 10 in the meantime. All right, so that's the fundamentals of how a turn works. What about on the Auto Sanchos turn? Because the turn now passes to the Auto Sanchos. In the solo game, they're working together. They actually just get one turn. They don't get Castilla and then Navarra, then back to me. It's just one turn for the Auto Sanchos combined, then it's back to me. To do the Auto Sancho turn, we draw the top card, and that's the card that they're going to choose to play. Right. We flip it over. We're not commander this time, remember. Okay. But instead, we play all the actions on this card from top to bottom. So first action is actually us, Aragon, and it says move 2 from your strongest army to opponent's weakest army, if not possible, to an empty region. Strongest army is just number of counters in the region. So there's 3 over here and there's 4 here. So you do count the garrisoned units. So 4 in this region makes it the strongest. So we've got to move 2 out of here, and we've got to move them, it says, to opponent's weakest. So that's empty. So if not possible, an empty region. Well, it is possible because we've got opponents here, we've got opponents here, which are adjacent. Now, I've got no choice here. I have to go for the weakest. And Navarra is the weakest. There's a strength 2 army here, there's a strength 3 army here, there's a strength 1 army here. So we will be going into region 8. Yeah, region 8. So we've been forced to do that. Okay. What happens next? Okay, Castilla says reserve this card at the end of the turn. So Auto Sanchos are going to reserve this card. So they're not doing anything other than that. And then Navarra says move 2 and attack 2, not in Navarra, and besiege 2, if not possible, fortify. All right, so move 2. Always from strongest army, which is this one. And they're going to look for weakest opponent. So we look at adjacent regions. Well, it's only this one. So they are going into here. Now the king is always the second piece they move if the king's available. So they're moving in here. Wow, this region's getting a little bit busy. Right, next action was, so we've done move to attack 2, not in Navarra. So where can they attack? Well, this is the only place they can attack. So they're going to do an attack 2 here in this region. And then besiege if they can. Right, so this is a little bit more interesting. Now remember, they're not attacking anyone in particular, they're attacking in the region. We look at all the field armies. That one there is the garrison. So red have got 2 small dice and 1 king. I've got 2 field armies, so I've got 2 small dice. Yellow has got 1 king and 1 field army, and they're doing an attack 2, so they get to add 2 small dice. Alright, use this token. This shows you, so you're keeping track of which region we're resolving the conflict in. Okay. Alright, let's get those dice rolled. And this should be a little bit more interesting. So starting with the attacker. The attacker is yellow. Navarra is attacking. So we've got 5, 3, a couple of 2s. And mine, green next, we're going clockwise. So a 3 and a 1, not a great roll for me. Doesn't look promising. And then Castilla, 2 6s, and another 3. No one's got any reserved cards. But if they had, let's just say, oh, I'll grab one of mine. Let's say Castilla had a reserved card. They're going to get this one reserved at the end of this turn. Oops. It's a 2 CP card. What they'll do is they'll add the CPs to the highest ranked die in order to make it the highest single. So that would move it up to an 8. You see. So that's why this battle chart, it is possible for these things to go all the way up. Right? Because Auto Sanchos can add CPs to dice. Now it's got 2 6s instead of, rather an 8 and a 6, rather than a pair, which, as we know, multiple dice in a column is bad news. Okay, so that's how it will use those dice. It's a little bit simpler because we don't have any reserve cards, so we just start at the highest. So we've got 2 dice here, that's no good, they disappear. Right, 5, we've got a single die, that's good, Navarra's done well. Now what they're looking to do now, they're going to remove the highest valued single die. They're going to remove this one. If the situation was slightly different, let's say that 3 wasn't there, they would look to find the highest valued single die or a single die equal to 1 and only one of their dice. So in this case, they would look to remove the 3 because then they're creating another single die. Do you see? And single dice are good. Right, but as it goes, even if they removed one from here, this is still a multi-die. This is still no good. All right. And obviously, they're not as bright as a human player. A human player might be able to look a little bit deeper than just one step ahead, but you know, that's that's cardboard AI for you. All right, so as it goes, they're taking this one and this one. Now remember, when they remove a die of an opponent's color, they also get to remove a token. So they're going to take away a green token. They're going to take one of our field armies. That was bad news for us. We were kind of hoping that they would target red. Because remember, the infighting is still allowed between the Auto Sanchos. As it goes, they took us. Right, let's keep working down. That's a multi-die column, that goes. That's a multi-die column, that goes. That's it. So the result of all that work is they destroyed one of our field armies. If I'd had some reserve cards, then I could have been potentially re-rolling that green one down here and hopefully tried to push it up a little bit higher. It might not have done the job because they still would have targeted a single die, possibly the one that was sitting in this column with the red and the yellow. If I'd moved that one out, then they might have targeted the red instead. You see? So that's where the different layers of strategy come in. Battles can be quite complex and intriguing, particularly when you've got reserve cards in play. Right, that's their attack done. So it was moved to attack 2, now besiege 2. Is there anywhere that they can do a besiege? Well, they're looking for field armies where there's an opponent that's fortified. they've only got field armies here and they're already fortifying here, so no. And it says if possible, if not possible, fortify 2. So I'm going to look to see now where they can fortify. Well, the only place they can fortify to is here in this neutral zone. So they will fortify 1, fortify 2. Their king's coming in. They've shored up this neutral territory really well. Okay, region 8 is pretty solid. Okay. So they've got 7 points still. 2, 4, 6, 7. We've only got 2. There's 2 here. So we need to do a little bit more. So we need to be careful. They're only 3 points away. Remember, 10 points is an instant win. I've got to decide whether I add extra units here, whether I take these small little towers and try and push my own score up. The benefit of trying to take this one down, obviously, is that we're pushing his score down as well as ours up. Right, this is would be discarded, but remember, Red said, or Castilla said, reserve this card at the end of the turn. So this becomes a reserved card for them. That's it. Turn moves back to us. Okay, we've not used a tiebreaker yet. Let's do another turn and probably show a few more little things. Let's use this 3 CP card. Remember, I'm commander this time, so I could throw this into reserve, but I'm going to use the 3 CPs. Now, in order to besiege, there's 3 units garrisoned here. I need to have 4 here. One other thing about the besiege action is you can only besiege 1 region at a time, so I can't besiege multiple places. We could attack here and try and take out these reds. I think I'm going to grab a couple of extra points while I can. So I'll use 1 to move in here. I'll use 1 to fortify up here. So that is a fortify in a tower. That gives me 1 point. And then I can fortify here. That gives me 2 points. All right, so it's 5 points to 7. But our units are spread very thinly. It's a pretty weak position. Let's see what they do. Well, first off, Castilla Red is going to deploy 3 to their home region. They've only got 2. So they'll deploy 2 to their home region and then recruit the remaining. So they've got 1 remaining, they'll recruit 1 more. That's Castilla done. Now Navarra is going to move 3 from their strongest army to an empty region, if not possible, to an opponent's weakest army. Okay, which is their strongest army? They've got 3 units here, they've got 3 units here. The king is seen to be slightly stronger, so this is deemed their strongest army. Okay, so there's 3 troops versus 2 troops and a king. To an empty region. Now there is an empty region here, and there's an empty region here. So which one do they choose to move to? This is where we use the tiebreaker. At the moment, this tiebreaker is pointing at highest. Okay, that would be lowest. This is highest. Okay, so this is region number 3. This is region number 2. They're going to look to move into this region, which they can do. Let's move 3. The king is always the second piece to move, and they're not going to move the last piece out of a garrison. Okay, so they're going to move the first one in, the second one in. The second one's always the king. They won't move the third. Being able to at least partially do the action is enough to satisfy it. All right. Note they have 1 CP left over for this move, so you might say, well, why don't they use the next one to just do a move from here? When the auto Sancho does a move, they'll only ever move from 1 selected region to 1 other adjacent region. Okay, they don't split their moves. So again, it's just another limit. But then this bottom action kind of makes up for it. Remember, they could potentially make up for it with this bottom action doing multiple things. Recruit and deploy and besiege would be the thing. So there you go. That's it. Green is me. No more done on that action. That's the end of that card. So this card is discarded. There's no sieges going on. I draw a new one. Turn goes back to Auto Sancho. Should we do one more Let's do one more. It's fun. It's fun. It's fun, this game, because you're watching how the thing develops and how can I squeeze these extra points in. Oh, it's so nice. Once the game's ticking over, it just kind of flows, and yeah, it's like one more turn, one more turn. All right, let's go. Okay, it's a 1 CP action. We start with Castilla. They're going to deploy one to their home region and recruit the remaining. Well, they can deploy. They've got one to deploy. So Castilla's building up some forces back home. Yellow next. Move one from their strongest army, which is that one up in Navarra now, to an empty region. Now, we used the tiebreaker last time. I forgot that every time you use a tiebreaker, you shift it. Okay, so we used it to tiebreak between these two regions. So we shift it down. So next time they want to use the tiebreaker, it's going to go to lowest, not highest. Right, bear that in mind. Move one from the strongest army to an empty region. So here's the strongest army. There's 1, 2, 3 adjacent empty regions. Will they choose region 9, region 10, or region 2? They're going to use the lowest, so they're going to go to region 2. So it's 1 to region 2, move 1, and then we switch the tiebreaker up. Okay, that's it, that's them done. Now, we're green, it's there, we're not commander, we have to do this part. Use 1 point on one of, we can, so this was for the auto, this is bits for us, okay? Make sense? 1 point of recruit, so we can either recruit, deploy to home region, or besiege. Well, I haven't got any units to deploy. I don't think there's any place I can besiege. No, I don't have any field armies where there are enemy garrisons. So I'm going to use 1 to recruit. Take 1 from the supply. That's it, that's discarded. Back to me, commander again. Now I do want to go again because I want to show you what happens next. Alright, this is it. The danger of letting red build up and build up. And red Castilla tends not to besiege very much. They create large field armies. Navarra do. They do tend to try and fortify and conquer. But let's do another 3 CPs. First is, I'm going to move my king. So that's 1 CP. Then I'm going to deploy. I'm going to deploy to my king. That's my second one. The third is I'm going to move this in here. Alright, that's my 3 CPs. Let's go. I want to get my king further out so that I'm not deploying further home, but I don't know. It feels like this is not a safe place to be. I'm not playing terribly well. I just want to show you the actions, I guess. Alright, so what do? So that's us. Castilla next. Deploy 3 to king. Recruit remaining units. Okay. They haven't got any units to deploy, so they're going to recruit 3 more. Like I say, their field armies get big. And their king's right in a useful spot. They can deploy right in the middle of the map here. My king, all the way back farther to the east, is less useful, as is Castilla's over here. Right, then Navarra, they're going to move 3, attack 3, not in Castilla, and fortify 3. So move 3, remember, is always from their strongest army. They've got a 2 strength army here, they've got a 2 strength army here, but this is one has the king. So this one here is the strongest, king is tiebreaker. Right, so they're going to move 3. They're looking for their weakest opposing army, which happens to be us over here in region 12. So they're going to move 3. They're going to move these 2 out. They will move both out. This is one of them wasn't. There's no garrison here. Okay. Now they're going to attack 3. Is there anywhere where they've got field armies with an opposing 3 armies? No, there isn't. Okay, so they're going to skip the attack and then fortify 3. There's nowhere they have field armies where they have a garrison that they can fortify. So they will do, it says if not possible, besiege 3. They're going to besiege. Now remember, every 1 CP moves 2 units in, so they're going to move 2 units in to besiege my castle. That's it, that's our action done. Let's draw back up. Now, we've reached the end of the turn and there is a siege in progress. So you remove a unit from each side. So that's one of theirs, one of mine. That's left their king as the sole unit, the sole counter. Lo and behold, they have now taken control of this castle, so I lose 2 points, and they gain 2 points. Wow, they're on 9. We're doing terribly. We've got to fight back. Now, tables have been turned, so although they've got the most points, these are quite weak. Now remember, I can't besiege in 2 places at once, so I could potentially move 2 in here, move some units down here. I could even go for this one. So this next turn appears to be pretty critical. I don't have 3 CPs, I do have 2. And that's going to cause a problem because I want to be able to move 2 units in and then besiege. But I've only got 2 CPs, so it's going to take 2 turns unless I besiege here. And there's not another 2 strength fortification that they can take. So if I knock 1 point off, they're going to have to take 2 places to fight back. So maybe I will focus on this one. So which strength 2 card will I use? I might actually use this one. Let's see. All right, there's all sorts of thoughts over which card to use. So I'm going to use 2 CPs, and I have to besiege this place here. It's the only thing I can do to take a point back. Problem is, it's going to take 2 turns. Oh my gosh, I'm unhappy. Yeah, I'm unhappy. This is going to use up quite a few of my units. I'm not going to do this. If I go here, let's see. I'll move my king. That's 1, 2. And I besiege next time, I'm going to potentially take his king out. Now, a defeated king will always go back to their home region. So I could push Navarra all the way back to their home region. Or I could come in here, but then I'm going to be at the mercy of this big force here. Let's do that. Let's go here. And let's hope they don't take 1 more point. They're not going to take points because I can see they're not going to take points. Because I know what actions they're going to take. Although, they've still got their turn. So that's me done. Then they're going to have Castilla, 2 from their strongest army, which is up here, to opponent's weakest. Well, they're going to move 2 in here. So they're just getting stronger here. And then Navarra is going to recruit 2, and then attack 2. If not possible, move 2. They don't have a field army, so they're going to move 2. So they're going to move 2 from here. They're not going to move the last one out, so they're moving 1, and they're going to come in here to defend this field because that's the only adjacent region where there are opposing units. Yeah. Okay, their turn. Right, we're going to do 1. Let's make this the last. We'll make this the last turn and see how it messes with us. Okay, deploy 1 to our home region. We haven't got any to deploy, so we recruit 1. So that's us done. We recruit 1. Right, then Castilla. Move 1 from your strongest to an empty region. Hey, this is their strongest. Move 1 to an empty region. Empty region, empty region. Tiebreaker's highest, so they're going to 10. So move 1 into 10. If they fortified this now, they've got their 10 points. That's red done. That's Castilla done. Navarra will now recruit 1 and attack 1. If not possible, move 1. Well, it is possible now because there's a field army here with a field army here. Okay, so we're going to have a battle here. 1, they're attacking 1, so they get an extra die, but they're against red's 3 field and 1 king. Right, let's see how this works out. For yellow. Remember, they won't pull their last unit in from the garrison. So if they had more units here, they would pull them into the field to fight, but they're not going to. Red's got a reserve card, so they can make things better for themselves. I don't think they're going to need to. So starting with the attacker, a 6 and a 4. And then red, 7, 2, 2, 2. Ooh. Now, they've got the highest ranking die, so they're not going to use their reserve card. If I'd rolled lower, if I'd rolled like a 5 or something, they would now use that, discard it, and bump that up to a 7. Okay? But they don't need to. Red can save this for another day. Right, highest ranking card, they're going to use the 7 to take out the 6 and remove a yellow token. Yellow has a die left. They're going to use the 4 to take out the 2, which is a red. They're going to remove a red. Then we've got 2 single 2s in a column together, multiple dice, just get wiped. All right, so that worked out a little better for yellow than I thought. They managed to take one out. They lost one of their own. All right, I think we'll leave it there. Turn comes back to us. I should have drawn a card. Turn comes back to us. We're probably going to, yeah, we've got enough. I'll probably just use this single now to besiege here. In fact, I'm going to do that. Besiege here. What would they do? Fortify 1, if not possible, besiege most favourable. So yellow's not doing anything because they don't have any, they can't fortify, they can't besiege. I was green. And then red's going to move 1 from strongest, which is here, to weakest opposing. So weakest opposing is either, well, it could be any of these. There's a 1 yellow here, there's a 1 yellow here, there's a 1 green here. They're going to go to the lowest region, which is region 1. So they're going to move 1 over here, switch the tiebreaker, and attack 1 where our field armies only in here. So they're going to do a 1v1 here. They've got 1, they're attacking with 1 CP. I've got 1 green die. I thought I wasn't doing another turn. There you go. 6, 6, 5. Now they will use their 2 CPs to push that up to an 8. 6 takes the 5. They defeat my ground troop. This one goes. There's no one to. There's no other opposing dice to use. Then it's fortify 1. So actually, this is game over because they'll fortify here and steal the 10 points. No, it's not quite a win because you have to. It's not an immediate. It's the end of the turn, and before the end of the turn, this siege is going to happen. So we kick out one of our troops, and their king goes back to Navarra. He goes back to his home castle actually, so he's going to sit there. But that's lost them 2 points and gained me 2 points. All right, we managed to save it. We managed to save it with that action. All right, draw back up. Now it's back to them. Okay. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there. But it is getting tighter. Now I feel a little bit happier because I mean, I've not got many units. In fact, the map's quite sparse right now. But if I can deploy, recruit and then deploy down here, potentially I can be pushing in from this direction. Yeah, my forces are really weak, but so are Navarra's right now. There you go then. It's such an interesting game, and yeah, the temptation is play another turn because it plays out really swiftly. And no, it's only 27 cards. The game's got an ultimate end point anyway. Remember, if we reach the end of this deck, the game will come to an end anyway. 3 Sanchos, look out for it. It's a super little game. Looks beautiful on the table, and this is just prototype. It looks great now already. Nice small little footprint, wonderful strategy in a small box. Look out for this latest pocket campaign from Surprise Stare Games.